The final celebration that turned into an explosion. 27 years. That's how long New York Knicks fans have waited for this moment. 27 years of heartbreak. 27 years of false hope. 27 years of watching other franchises celebrate while Madison Square Garden became a museum of what could have been, and now, somehow, the Knicks are back, just 4 wins away from an NBA championship. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The biggest voice in New York isn't Jalen Brunson. It isn't Karl-Anthony Towns. It isn't head coach Mike Brown. It's Stephen A. Smith. As the city prepares to celebrate the most magical Knicks run in a generation, Stephen A. isn't handing out flowers. He's lighting matches. Because while millions of fans are focused on banners, trophies, and championship dreams, Stephen A. keeps dragging one name back into the spotlight. James Dolan, the owner, the man who has controlled this franchise since 1999, the man many Knicks fans blame for turning one of basketball's most iconic organizations into a national punchline for nearly 3 decades. And Stephen A. isn't interested in letting history disappear just because the Knicks finally started winning. What should have been the greatest celebration in modern Knicks history suddenly transformed into something much bigger, a reckoning. Every finals victory brought back old memories. The disastrous contracts, the failed rebuilds, the superstar rejections, the public feuds, the humiliating headlines. The painful question echoed louder with every passing game. Did James Dolan build this contender? Or did the Knicks succeed despite him? Stephen A. Smith wasn't whispering anymore. He was shouting it on national television. He reminded viewers that before this miracle run, the Knicks were down and desperate. Critics had counted them out. Fans feared another collapse. Then came Stephen A.'s now famous emotional rant demanding urgency and accountability. The team responded, the wins started piling up, the momentum exploded. And Stephen A., half joking and half serious, began taking credit for helping ignite the fire. But beneath the humor was something deeper. A lifelong Knicks fan refusing to forget. Because to him, one finals appearance doesn't erase 27 years of frustration. It doesn't erase broken trust. And it certainly doesn't erase James Dolan. Now, Knicks Nation finds itself torn between 2 powerful emotions, pure joy and unfinished anger. So here's the question. If the Knicks finally win it all, should James Dolan be celebrated as the owner who brought a championship back to New York? Or should fans remember the decades of pain that came before this moment? Let me know where you're watching from tonight. If you believe this finals run changes everything, comment 1 below. If you think Dolan still hasn't earned the trust of Knicks fans, comment 2. And if you're a diehard Knicks fan who survived all 27 years of this roller coaster, hit that subscribe button and join the conversation because this story is only getting started. The wait of 27 years before the bright lights of the NBA Finals returned to Madison Square Garden, there was something Knicks fans knew all too well. Disappointment. Not just a few losing seasons, not just one failed rebuild. An entire generation grew up believing that heartbreak was simply part of being a Knicks fan. Year after year, hope arrived wearing a different face. A new coach, a promising draft pick, a flashy signing, a bold front office move that was supposed to change everything. Every October, New York convinced itself that this time would be different. And every spring, reality came crashing down. The Knicks became a franchise trapped in an endless cycle of almost contenders, almost relevant, almost respectable. Meanwhile, Madison Square Garden remained packed. The fans never left. They showed up through the losing streaks, the embarrassing headlines, the failed experiments, and the seasons that seemed over before they ever truly began. They kept believing because that's what New Yorkers do. They endure, they wait, they demand better. That's why this finals run feels different. This isn't just another successful season. It's emotional redemption. For some fans, it's the first time in their adult lives they've seen the Knicks standing on basketball's biggest stage. For others, it's the payoff for decades of loyalty that often felt completely one-sided. But even as the city celebrates, Stephen A. Smith refuses to let people forget how long it took to get here. Because to him, this isn't simply a story about triumph. It's also a story about accountability. He looks at this roster and sees something Knicks fans had been begging for all along. Competence. Jalen Brunson emerged as the fearless leader who embraced the pressure of New York instead of running from it. Karl-Anthony Towns brought star power and offensive versatility. Mikal Bridges delivered toughness, defense, and the mentality required to survive deep playoff battles. Leon Rose quietly assembled a team built on chemistry rather than headline. Suddenly, the Knicks weren't selling dreams anymore. They were producing results. And that reality only raises an uncomfortable question. If the pieces were always there, the money, the market, The most passionate fan base in basketball, why did it take 27 years to return to this moment? Why did one of the NBA's premier franchises spend decades searching for an identity it should have never lost? Those questions linger beneath every celebration. Every deafening roar inside Madison Square Garden carries echoes of seasons fans would rather forget. Every Brunson clutch shot feels like years of frustration being released all at once. Every victory feels like validation for people who never stopped caring when they had every reason to walk away. This finals appearance isn't just proof that the Knicks are back. It's proof that the fans were right to expect more all along. And maybe that's why Stephen A's voice has become impossible to ignore. Because while the rest of New York is focused on what this team might accomplish next, he's reminding everyone of what it took to get here. The joy is real, the excitement is deserved, but so are the scars. And until the Knicks finish this story, the ghost of the past will continue to sit quietly beside every celebration. The rant that lit the fire. Stephen A. Smith didn't just criticize the Knicks. He exploded. With New York struggling at a critical point in the playoffs, he unleashed an emotional rant on national television, demanding urgency, toughness, and accountability. To him, this wasn't just another debate topic. It was 27 years of frustration finally boiling over. The message was simple: enough excuses. The Knicks couldn't afford another collapse, not with the finals within reach. Not after asking one of the most loyal fan bases in sports to keep believing through decades of disappointment. Then something unexpected happened. New York responded, the energy changed. The team played with more confidence, more intensity, and more purpose. The wins started coming, and suddenly, the Knicks looked like legitimate championship contenders. Stephen A. never one to shy away from the spotlight, jokingly took credit for the turnaround. He claimed his passionate outburst helped wake the team up. Behind the humor, though, was something real. He had become the voice of Knicks fans everywhere. The voice of people tired of false promises. The voice of fans who had defended this franchise for years while everyone else mocked it. That's why this finals run means so much. The Knicks aren't just chasing a title. They're fighting to erase years of embarrassment and prove that New York basketball belongs back among the NBA's elite. And Stephen A. isn't interested in celebrating participation trophies. He doesn't want a feel-good story. He wants the ending. Knicks fans have waited nearly 3 decades to see a championship, because if this team falls short, he won't hesitate to say what millions of fans are thinking all over again. The owner who cannot escape the spotlight. James Dolan may not be taking the shots. He may not be drawing up plays. He may not be standing at half court while Madison Square Garden roars. But somehow, even during the Knicks' biggest moment in decades, his name keeps coming back. That is the power of history. For years, Dolan has been one of the most criticized owners in American sports. Knicks fans have blamed him for failed eras, messy front office decisions, public controversies, and a culture that often felt more chaotic than competitive. So now, even with New York in the finals, people are asking a brutal question. Does Dolan deserve credit for this success? Or did the Knicks finally win because he stepped back? That is where Stephen A. Smith refuses to stay quiet. He looks at this finals run and sees the work of Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, Leon Rose, and a roster that finally makes sense. But when it comes to Dolan, Stephen A. sees decades of baggage. He remembers the years when the Knicks had money but no direction. He remembers the moments when the franchise made headlines for everything except winning. He remembers when the Garden felt less like the home of basketball greatness and more like the center of another embarrassing NBA story. That is why Dolan cannot simply walk into this moment and receive applause without question. Because trust is not rebuilt by one playoff run. Trust is rebuilt by consistency, by smart decisions, by humility, by letting basketball people make basketball choices. And that may be the biggest lesson hiding inside this Knicks comeback. The franchise became dangerous when the noise got quieter, when the roster construction became smarter, when the team stopped chasing empty headlines and started building around identity, toughness, and real chemistry. Stephen A. understands that, and he wants fans to understand it too. This finals run is special, but it should not become a free pass for ownership. If Dolan wants credit, he has to protect what has finally been built. He has to keep investing. He has to avoid panic. He has to let the front office operate without ego getting in the way. Because New York does not just want one magical run. New York wants a real era. And if Dolan becomes the reason this moment falls apart, Stephen A. will not let him hide from it. Not now. Not after 27 years. Not when the Knicks are finally close enough to touch history. The superstar New York let slip away. Kevin Durant became one of the names Stephen A. Smith could never forget. Not because Durant played for the Knicks. Because he didn't. When KD chose Brooklyn instead of Madison Square Garden, it felt like more than a free agent decision. It felt like a public rejection of everything Knicks fans believe their franchise should represent. New York had the market. New York had the spotlight. New York had the arena every superstar should want to own. But Durant went across the bridge. And for Stephen A., that moment exposed something painful about the Knicks under James Dolan. The issue was not just losing a superstar. The issue was why superstars no longer seemed to trust the organization. Durant once described the Knicks in a way that embarrassed the franchise, and Stephen A. believed Dolan never truly moved past it. So when another chance appeared to pursue KD later, the Knicks did not make the kind of aggressive move many fans expected. That decision still burned, because players like Durant do not become available often. A scorer like that can change a franchise overnight. A talent like that can turn hope into fear for every opponent in the league. And yet, once again, the Knicks were watching from the outside. Stephen A. saw it as another example of pride getting in the way of winning. In his mind, great ownership cannot operate on emotion. It cannot make decisions based on grudges, image, or personal feelings. It has to chase championships with discipline. That is why the Durant situation still matters during this finals run, because it reminds fans how close New York has been to changing its future before and how often the franchise failed to finish the job. Now the Knicks finally have stars who embrace the challenge. Jalen Brunson did not run from New York. Karl Anthony Towns stepped into the pressure. Mikal Bridges brought the kind of toughness this city respects. But Stephen A. knows how fragile success can be. One missed opportunity can shape years. One bad decision can close a championship window. One owner's ego can scare away the next superstar before the conversation even begins. That is the fear underneath his criticism. He is not simply angry about Kevin Durant. He is angry about what Durant represented. A chance. A warning. A reminder that the Knicks cannot afford to be careless anymore. Because in the NBA, talent chooses trust. And for too long, New York had the stage without the stability. Now that the Knicks are finally back near the top, Stephen A. wants one thing made clear. Never let ego cost this franchise another superstar again. The wound Madison Square Garden never forgot. Charles Oakley was never just another former Knicks player. He was toughness. He was loyalty. He was the kind of player New York fans respected because he played like every possession was personal. He fought for the jersey, protected his teammates, and gave Madison Square Garden the kind of edge that made the building feel dangerous. That is why what happened to him still hurts. When Oakley was removed from Madison Square Garden during a Knicks game, the image spread everywhere. A franchise legend being escorted out of the arena he once helped define. For many fans, it became one of the darkest symbols of the Dolan era. Stephen A. Smith understood immediately why that moment mattered. It was not just about one argument. It was about respect. It was about how a franchise treats the people who helped build its identity. To Knicks fans, Oakley represented the old soul of New York basketball. The grit, the pride, the refusal to back down. Seeing him pushed out of the Garden felt like watching the organization turn its back on its own history. And that is exactly why Stephen A. kept bringing it up. Because championship culture is not only about spending money, it is about honoring the people who made the jersey matter before the current stars arrived. If a team cannot respect its legends, how can fans trust it to respect the future? That question still follows James Dolan. Even now, with the Knicks in the finals, the Oakley incident remains part of the conversation because it showed something deeper than bad public relations. It showed the distance between ownership and the emotional heartbeat of the fan base. New York fans do not forget moments like that. They may forgive winning. They may cheer through pain. They may pack the arena no matter what, but they remember. And Stephen A. remembers with them. That is why this finals run carries so much emotional weight. The Knicks are not just trying to beat another team. They are trying to repair years of broken connection between the franchise and the people who never stopped loving it. Winning helps, but winning does not erase everything. A championship banner would bring joy back to the Garden, but the organization still has to prove it understands what the Garden represents. It is not just a building, it is memory, it is loyalty, it is legacy. And for Stephen A., the Oakley situation became proof that James Dolan had forgotten that. Now the Knicks have a chance to write a new chapter, a better one, a winning one. But if they want this era to last, they cannot just build around stars. They have to rebuild trust. Because in New York, respect is not optional. It is the price of being loved. When fans became part of the battle, the tension around James Dolan was never limited to basketball decisions. It went beyond trades, beyond contracts, beyond coaching changes. At some point, the fight became personal between ownership and the people who loved the team the most. The fans. For years, Knicks fans carried the franchise through failure. They filled Madison Square Garden when the team was losing. They bought the jerseys. They defended the players. They argued with rivals. They kept the Knicks relevant even when the standings said they had no reason to believe. And yet, some of those same fans felt treated like enemies when they criticized ownership. That is what made the controversy around banned fans and anti-Dolan chants so explosive. To Stephen A. Smith, it was almost impossible to defend Because fans are not supposed to be silent customers. They are the soul of the franchise. If they are angry, it is usually because they care. If they chant for change, it is because they have suffered through enough losing to demand better. If they criticize the owner, that does not mean they hate the team. It means they love it too much to accept failure forever. That is why Stephen A. saw those moments as part of a larger pattern. Instead of embracing criticism, Dolan often seemed to fight it. Instead of understanding the pain of the fan base, ownership appeared defensive. Instead of letting the noise become motivation, the franchise created more noise around itself. And that is dangerous in a city like New York, because New York does not reward thin skin. New York respects accountability. Knicks fans can handle losing if they believe there is a plan. They can survive rebuilding if they believe the front office is honest. They can be patient if they feel respected. But once fans feel ignored, every mistake becomes louder. Every bad headline hits harder. Every ownership decision gets viewed through suspicion. That is the damage Stephen A. keeps pointing toward. This finals run has brought joy back to the city, but it has not erased the memory of fans feeling pushed aside. And if the Knicks want to turn this moment into a true championship era, ownership has to understand that rebuilding trust with the fan base is just as important as building the roster. The players can win games. The front office can make trades. The coach can design schemes, but the culture around a franchise starts at the top. It starts with how people are treated, how legends are honored, how fans are heard, how criticism is handled when the lights get hot. Stephen A. knows the Knicks have something rare right now: momentum, belief, a city ready to explode with pride. But he also knows how quickly that can disappear if old habits return. Because New York fans are not asking for perfection. They are asking for respect. And after 27 years of waiting, that should not be too much to demand. The money question no one can ignore. The Knicks are not cheap right now. That is the part of the story people have to understand. This roster costs serious money. New York invested in stars, depth, toughness, and playoff experience. They pushed forward because they knew this window could not be wasted. Jalen Brunson needed help. The city demanded progress. The fan base had waited too long for another cautious rebuild. So when Stephen A. Smith talks about James Dolan and money, he is not simply saying the owner refused to spend. The truth is more complicated. His real concern is whether Dolan will keep spending the right way. Because in the NBA, one expensive roster is not enough. Championship teams require patience. They require smart adjustments. They require owners who can handle pressure without panicking. They require front offices that are allowed to think long-term instead of reacting emotionally after every loss. That is where Stephen A. becomes nervous. If the Knicks win, Dolan may celebrate. But if they fall short, what happens then? Does he keep the core together? Does he trust Leon Rode? Does he pay the luxury tax again? Does he add the missing piece? Or does frustration take over and destroy the progress? That is the fear hiding behind all the noise. Stephen A. has watched this franchise spend before. But spending is not the same as building. The Knicks have thrown money at problems in the past and still ended up trapped in disappointment. Bad contracts, bad timing, bad leadership, big checks without a real plan. This version of the Knicks feels different because the spending finally matches the identity. Brunson is not just a star. He is a leader. Towns is not just a name. He is a matchup problem. Bridges is not just a trade piece. He is a culture fit. The roster makes sense, and that is exactly why the next decisions matter so much. New York cannot treat this finals run like the finish line. It has to be the beginning of something stronger. A championship window is precious, and once it opens, ownership has to protect it with discipline. That means paying when necessary, waiting when necessary, improving without overreacting, and most importantly, staying out of the way when the basketball people are doing their jobs. Stephen A. is not asking Dolan to disappear from responsibility. He is asking him to understand what responsibility really means. It means supporting the mission without turning himself into the story. It means using money as a tool, not as a headline. It means proving that this run is not an accident. Because Knicks fans have already seen what happens when the franchise gets careless. They have seen hope collapse under ego. They have seen big names arrive without a real structure. They have seen financial power wasted on short-term thinking. This time has to be different. If Dolan truly wants credit, he cannot just pay for a finals team once. He has to help sustain a winning culture. That is the real money question. Not whether the Knicks spend enough to get here, but whether they will spend wisely enough to stay here. If New York falls short, if the Knicks win the championship, everything changes. The pain becomes part of the legend. The waiting becomes worth it. The years of jokes, failure, and frustration become the long road that made the final celebration even sweeter. But if they lose, that is where the real test begins. Stephen A. Smith understands that a finals run can either become a foundation or a missed opportunity. One path leads to stability. The other leads right back to chaos. And for Knicks fans, that fear is real. They have seen promising moments fall apart before. They have seen excitement turn into panic. They have seen the franchise make emotional decisions after disappointment instead of patient ones. That cannot happen now. If New York comes up short, James Dolan has to resist the worst instinct an owner can have: overreaction. You do not destroy a team just because it falls one step short of greatness. You study it, you strengthen it, you find the missing detail, you add the right piece without breaking the identity that got you there. That is what championship organizations do. They do not chase headline. They chase improvement. Stephen A. is worried because history gives fans a reason to worry. The old Knicks too often confused activity with progress. They made moves because pressure was loud, not because the plan was clear. This team deserves better than that. Jalen Brunson has earned trust. The core has earned patience. The front office has earned room to keep building. And the fans have earned an organization that does not panic the moment the road gets hard. Because falling short in the finals is painful, but it is not failure if the franchise learns from it. Failure would be letting ego take over. Failure would be blaming the wrong people. Failure would be breaking apart a culture that finally feels real. That is the danger Stephen A. keeps pointing toward. He is not trying to ruin the celebration. He is trying to protect the future. Because this moment is bigger than one series. It is about whether the Knicks can finally become what they were always supposed to be. Not a one-year miracle, not a temporary headline. A serious, stable, championship-level organization that requires maturity from everyone. The players, the coaches, the front office, and especially the owner. If Dolan wants to change the way fans see him, this is his chance. Not by talking, not by demanding credit, not by turning the spotlight toward himself, but by making the right decisions when emotions are at their highest. That is when real leadership shows. The Knicks are close enough to taste history, but being close is dangerous. It can make people desperate. It can make owners impatient. It can make a franchise forget how far it has already come. Stephen A. wants New York to finish the job, but if they cannot, he wants them to stay strong enough to come back. Because the worst ending would not be losing the final. The worst ending would be letting one loss restart the cycle. Knicks fans thought they had finally escaped. The lesson New York cannot forget: this finals run is more than a basketball story. It is a warning, a reward, and a lesson all at once. For the Knicks, the lesson is simple. Talent can win games, but culture keeps winning alive. Jalen Brunson gave New York leadership. Karl-Anthony Towns gave the offense another level. Mikal Bridges gave the team toughness and identity. Leon Rose gave the franchise structure. But now, James Dolan has to give the organization something even more: stability. No panic, no ego, no emotional decisions that destroy what took years to build. If the Knicks win, they must not become satisfied. If they lose, they must not become desperate. That is how real contenders survive. Stephen A. Smith's anger may sound loud, dramatic, and sometimes personal, but beneath all the noise is a message every franchise should understand. Respect the fans, protect the culture, spend with purpose, trust the right people, and never let pride become bigger than winning. For 27 years, Knicks fans waited for a team that made them believe again. They did not ask for perfection. They asked for effort, honesty, toughness, and a franchise that looked worthy of the city on its chest. Now they finally have that, and the responsibility is massive. This cannot be treated like a lucky run. It has to become the foundation of a new era. New York basketball should not be known for chaos anymore. It should be known for discipline, unity, and fight. The Garden should not just be loud because fans are desperate. It should be loud because the team gives them something real to believe in. That is the human side of this story. Fans invest emotion into teams they may never control. They suffer through losses. They defend players they may never meet. They pass loyalty down through families, neighborhoods, and generation. That loyalty deserves respect. And when a franchise finally earns it back, the worst thing it can do is take it for granted. So whether this season ends with a parade or heartbreak, the Knicks have a choice. They can honor this moment by building wisely, or they can waste it by repeating old mistakes. Stephen A. will keep yelling because that is who he is. But the message behind the yelling matters. New York does not need drama from ownership. It needs vision. It needs patience. It needs peace inside the building so the players can chase greatness on the court. Because championships are not built by fear, they are built by trust, and after 27 years, Knicks fans deserve nothing less. If you believe New York basketball is finally back, hit that like button, share this video with another NBA fan, and subscribe to the channel for more stories behind the league's biggest moments. And before you leave, comment below. Type 1 if you think the Knicks are building a real championship era. Type 2 if you still do not trust James Dolan. Type 3 if Stephen A. Smith was right to keep the pressure on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.